Well, Florida State has set the college football world on fire with the news that they have scheduled an emergency board meeting for Friday, with the expectation being that they are going to start the process of leaving the ACC. Everybody thinks it'll be the Big Ten or the SEC, and those are still overwhelmingly the most likely options for them to leave. But the Big 12 is a possibility, according to one very well-connected reporter. Welcome into the channel. I am John Kurtz. Here on this channel, we talk college football, college basketball, conference realignment from a Big 12 slant. Please consider subscribing if you have not. Live shows Wednesdays and Sundays. They are a blast. You do not want to miss those. You can click the bell to know when it is that I'm going live and make sure that you are set up for those alerts. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you want to support the channel that way. That is much appreciated. And please like the video or leave a comment in the comment section. Love me, hate me, agree, disagree. All of that is great. So here's what we have. A little bit more on Florida State's move here, and this is going to be through the reporting of Brett McMurphy from the Action Network, who has been nails on a lot of this stuff, as well as Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports. They're talking about the potential destination here for Florida State, which obviously most of that discussion centers around the Big Ten and the SEC, but there is actually a little bit about our very own Big 12. So here's what Brett McMurphy says. Florida State has scheduled a Board of Trustees meeting Friday when the school is expected to officially begin the process of pursuing an exit from the ACC, sources told Action Network. The school has not notified the ACC of its intention to leave, sources said. FSU currently has no official offer to join another league, but is expected to be highly sought after by either the Big Ten or the SEC. Well, the Big 12 is also a possibility, sources said. Now, they also leave this quote, this will have an Oppenheimer-like ripple effect throughout the college landscape, an industry source said. And if you're a Big 12 fan, that's what to pay probably more attention to here, as opposed to Florida State being this huge mammoth whale prize. It's more about who else could come down. Louisville, Pitt, Syracuse, Duke, schools in that sort of price range could wind up in the Big 12, and that is probably what to pay more attention to. In fact, Dan Wetzel went down that road. He did not mention Florida State in the Big 12, but he added this in his reporting. He said, then there is the Big 12, which would gladly snap up just about any and every ACC school it could to build a massive nationwide operation. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark has even focused on basketball, which he views as undervalued. A Big 12 with basketball powers that include Arizona, Kansas, Baylor, North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, Louisville, and so on would easily be the best in the country. Every turn of conference realignment brings something unexpected. And yes, the focus on basketball is very, very true. I would think Yormark would love to get his hands on Duke. We know he's been talking about Gonzaga a bunch. That's not even listed there. That potentially is still out as a possibility for the Big 12. There have been multiple reports about that. So it was only McMurphy that mentioned Florida State. On the Florida State front, look, the Big 12 is already slightly ahead of the ACC in terms of payouts in 2022, the last fiscal year. They were ahead by a couple $1 million of the ACC. The Big 12, with its new TV deal, secured at $32 million basically per year, 31.7 for schools moving forward, is going to keep them just slightly in front of the ACC. But even with Florida State coming in, potentially being able to renegotiate a TV deal, get some extra money added to that, it's not going to be life-changing money for Florida State in the Big 12. They will still be significantly behind the Big 10 and the SEC by, would have to imagine, still $20+ million per year. So it's not going to be the total change Florida State would want. Maybe that's some sort of non-permanent solution for Florida State and a last-ditch effort if they had to find a home to go to the Big 12, because they have said independence will not work for them. But it's at least still mentioned out there as an emergency sort of possibility by Brett McMurphy. So we'll pay a little bit of attention to it. And as far as the Big 10 goes and the SEC goes, there's a lot of really good in-depth reporting here from McMurphy and Wetzel. We'll start with back to Brett McMurphy's story. He said the Seminoles' decision drastically impacts the college football landscape by accelerating even more realignment, this time among the sports two behemoths, the Big 10 and the SEC. The Big 10 would love to get programs in the talent-rich Southeast, sources said. The Big 10 also has, quote, significant interest in several ACC schools, most notably Florida State, sources said. Starting in 2024, the Big 10's 18 members, including USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington, are all Association of American Universities members except for Nebraska. So that AAU tag that we always talk about, everybody in the Big 10 except Nebraska has it. The Huskers, though, were Big 10 members, or were AAU members, rather, when they joined the Big 10 at first. So Florida State is not an AAU member, but an AAU membership is, quote, not a requirement to join the Big 10, a Big 10 source told Action Network. maybe AAU status is a preference, but solid academics are measured a variety of ways, the source said. So basically, look, it's the realignment game. AAU gets thrown out, academics gets thrown out, but the reality is when push comes to shove, if the money's right, it sounds like the Big Ten would be willing to add Florida State, or maybe more appropriately, Fox would be willing to add Florida State. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey has said there's nothing in the league's bylaws or any gentleman's agreement that prohibits adding schools in a state with existing members. The SEC already has Florida, so it might be hesitant to add Florida State. However, would the SEC pursue Florida State so that its biggest rival, the Big Ten, couldn't land the Seminoles? And a source said, don't discount the bitter rivalry between ESPN and Fox. Fox would love to add a Florida market to the Big Ten that features markets in Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, and throughout the Midwest. Quote, there's no way the SEC wants Fox and the Big Ten to plant a flag in Florida by adding FSU and Miami, a source told Action Network. So a lot of this may be the SEC just playing defense if they were going to add Florida State. It would be a defensive move to keep it from going to the Big Ten. Besides FSU, the most likely schools to leave the ACC and challenge the grant of rights are Clemson, Miami, and North Carolina, sources said. If several schools are fleeing the ACC, independent Notre Dame, which is an ACC member in all sports but football, might reconsider its commitment to the league. The Irish are contractually obligated to join the ACC if they decide to join a football league before 2036. So, speaking of teams trying to get out of a contract, Notre Dame also would have to get out of its ACC contract in that case. Dan Wetzel from Yahoo will add this onto the reporting. He says there's no clear-cut landing place, but plenty of talk among SEC and Big Ten administrators that despite Florida State's storied past and present strength, FSU wouldn't be a serious candidate for expansion. Same for Clemson, even with its recent national titles. So you're going to get a different kind of spin here from Dan Wetzel. His sources seem to be less bullish on Florida State being a slam dunk to the SEC or the Big Ten. Wetzel says on a competitive level, it doesn't make sense, but the repeated conventional wisdom is that if ACC schools were available for poaching, then North Carolina and Virginia might be the first choices. Academics, demographics, and the ability to extend the league's footprint into new territory would win out. That's what they say, at least, for now. But, quote, everything changes if schools are truly available, one Big Ten source said. Despite what is said, there has been no reason to examine all of this, so it's hard to know. Basically, the idea there being like, look, when push comes to shove, this might actually happen. That's basically how it went with Oregon and Washington. Didn't seem like there was a lot of appetite there from the Big Ten until push came to shove, and then they went and made it happen. The SEC is believed to be a less likely option for Florida State, Clemson, or Miami. The league is set to begin as a 16-team operation next season, existing in contiguous states. It is already powerful. It's already rich. It has now taken over large swaths of Texas. The SEC's goal is to play a level of football that appeals to a national audience. It already has schools in Florida and South Carolina. Quote, my sense is there is more opposition than interest, one SEC source said. Any move on FSU and or others would be defensive, mainly to block the Big Ten from gaining a foothold in the region. The Big Ten might be different. It is aggressively snapping up television draws and doesn't care whether it makes any geographic, cultural, or traditional sense. It begins as an 18-team entity next season. The importance of the Big Ten network, getting basic cable subscription still matters, even as cord cutting has limited those numbers. Adding exciting football matchups would no doubt appeal to Fox, which is its main television partner. FSU, Clemson, and Miami all bring that before UNC and UVA, or maybe North Carolina jumps in with the first three schools. An ACC breakup could also force Notre Dame, the most coveted TV property, to, if not come aboard full-time, at least set up some kind of scheduling agreement with the Big Ten like it currently has with the ACC. So, pretty similar thoughts there. I think you can sync those up. The difference is going to be how likely each guy feels like the Big Ten would really snatch up Florida State here. Or the SEC also. Wetzel's sources a little bit less bullish than what Brett McMurphy's were, but the general tone is Big Ten would want Florida State to expand into the state of Florida. SEC would perhaps want Florida State to just block the Big Ten and be a move of playing defense. Big 12 could be a complete and total fallback option. If nothing else, the Big 12 stands to gain some more basketball power here if the ACC does implode. And Notre Dame may have to rethink things in their agreement with the ACC if schools start deciding to leave. That's where we're at right now with this Florida State saga. There's going to be much more to come. Make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. You're checking out the live shows on Wednesdays and Sundays. Do believe that we'll skip this Sunday with the holiday coming up, but outside of that, typically you're going to find me live Wednesdays and Sundays. Also content like this throughout the week. Make sure you're subscribed. Click the bell. Please like the video. Leave a comment underneath the video. And if you are so inclined, you can support the channel on Venmo at John-Kurtz-4. Appreciate all of you guys watching. Take care, and I will talk to you soon.